Hello, everyone, and good evening. I'm Don Arleth, and welcome to Flash News, where we give you a quick rundown of the day's events. During the last 24 hours, over 18,000 new coronavirus infections were reported in Poland. This is a significant decrease compared to the previous days, but not a breakthrough yet. Doctors, experts, and the Ministry of Health are calling for those who have already recovered from the virus to donate their plasma, which could help treat patients more seriously affected in hospitals.
Polish Red Cross blood donation days are this year special. Doctors appeal to people who have already defeated the coronavirus to donate plasma. For the time being, plasma is priceless. It can indeed save lives. Persons who have contracted COVID-19 after 28 days after the symptoms can report by phone to the regional blood donation centers. In a daily report, the Ministry of Health informed about more than 18,000 new cases of coronavirus. This is the lowest result in 3 weeks, and at the same time the number of free COVID beds has increased, but according to experts, this does not mean yet that the situation has stabilized. On average, the decrease lasts twice as long as the increase, so for the time being it is a moderate optimism. For the time being, strict sanitary rules apply. Many regulations might be changed, but not those being currently in force. Always with a mask, always with a distance. I wear a mask, I disinfect hands and maintain distance. Mask, social distance and frequent hand washing. I stick to this. Now time is key because everyone is waiting for the introduction of a vaccine in the second half of January.
There will be a new round of economic stimulus for the sectors of the economy most affected by the increased restrictions and business closures. The new measures will be prepared by the Ministry of Development, Labor and Technology. Many businesses are eagerly waiting for support. Meanwhile, the retail sector has something to be happy about. Recently, it was announced that shopping malls will be reopened starting on Saturday.
Thanks to a decision of the government, trade could start operating again. The solution is supposed to help the economy during the pandemic, but nevertheless, Poles have to be responsible and respect the sanitary regime. While Christmas is coming and people want to go shopping normally. I am happy. I myself work in a shopping mall, so this is good news. Representatives of shopping centers emphasize that opening stores before Christmas will save many Polish companies from bankruptcy and tens of thousands of people from losing their jobs. This is very good news for us. This is a very important, extremely important period of the year for trade. Fourth quarter, holiday period, we are all waiting for it. However, shopping centers must make sure that there are no crowds or long queues in the stores. There can be only one customer per 15 square meters of retail space. If we remain cautious, then I think that somehow we will survive all this. What is at stake is not only the containment of the pandemic, but also further activity of the economy.
The first Americans will be able to get a COVID-19 vaccination starting on December 11th. Pfizer says it will be ready to bring its vaccine to market within just a few hours after being approved for emergency use. Meanwhile, the FDA has granted another emergency use authorization for Regeneron, the same antibody-based drug used to treat President Donald Trump.
A cocktail of two monoclonal antibodies is considered to be one of the most promising treatments for COVID-19, although it is still being tested. Patients who have been administered the test drug, including the President of the United States, have had a much milder course of the infection. The situation is worst in the United States. During the last 24 hours, over 200,000 new infections were reported. Americans undergo mass testing before Thanksgiving so as to safely visit family members. According to the Daily Telegraph, the British government is planning to loosen restrictions from the 22nd to the 28th of December.
As Christmas is not going to be normal this year, but that said, the Prime Minister and everyone else were looking at ways to see how families can spend some time with each other over Christmas period. Obviously, that's something that we would like to do.
In Germany, where demonstrations of restriction opponents took place, the number of infected people increased during the last 24 hours by 15,500 new cases. The epidemic situation in France is improving. The government announced easing lockdown measures. Especially the owners of ski resorts are waiting impatiently for new details. Currently in France, Italy, Austria and Germany, the lifts in the high mountains remain closed. The local authorities hope that this will help to reduce the infection rate and the resorts will open in the high season.
Belarusian police detained more than 200 people in Minsk during the latest demonstrations. Thousands took to the streets of the Belarusian capital, and police used stun grenades to disperse the crowds. Anti-government protests have been ongoing for months since the contested presidential elections in August.
Protest organizers this week asked people to gather in dozens of different spots all across Minsk before forming bigger groups to make it more difficult for police to control the crowd. The street rallies were reignited following the death of a 31-year-old anti-government protester, Roman Bondarenko, who died in hospital earlier this month following what demonstrators said was a severe beating by security forces. The Ministry of Interior denied responsibilities for Bondarenko's death, saying he was killed in a scuffle with civilians.
Now let's move to Guatemala, where fierce protests erupted in the country's capital. Thousands of Guatemalans are furious with the next year's budget because of its deficiencies. They're also demanding the president's resignation. The situation escalated quickly as protesters set fire to the parliament.
Next year's budget provides for a record deficit of $13 billion. The project was approved by Parliament under pressure from the president. The majority of the chamber is composed of deputies of the ruling party. Protesters point out that the budget neglects the fight against child poverty and malnutrition, which affects almost half of children under the age of 5. Another reason for the president's criticism by his medical profession is his management of the crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, especially the shortage of staff, equipment and medicine in hospitals.
Spain will increase its police presence in Senegal to tackle criminal networks responsible for an upsurge in illegal migration from the West African coast to its territory. The foreign minister of Spain met with his counterpart in Senegalese capital of Dakar to discuss the crisis. About 17,000 migrants flocked to the Canary Islands this year alone.
To encourage would-be migrants to pursue regular channels, Spain will broaden the social security rights of Senegalese citizens legally resident in Spain. The Senegalese government has put together a number of procedures. Procedures to dissuade people to migrate illegally, procedures to persuade and communicate against illegal migration, procedures to support the youth and dissuade them from leaving, procedures to crack down against the smugglers who have put in place a passage economy for illegal migration. We are going to reinforce our presence of men and women from the Guardia Civil, the national police, fighting to dismantle criminal networks of human trafficking in this country. This has been the commitment that I have transmitted to the Senegalese authorities. According to some non-governmental organizations, more than 400 people from Senegal are believed to have died attempting the dangerous passage since the beginning of October alone.
Over 400 passengers had to spend the night on board a Finnish ferry during an unscheduled stopover. Just a few miles from harbor, due to a storm, the Viking Grace was pushed aground and onto coastal rocks. Fortunately, no one was injured.
Extremely strong crosswind had a bad angle of passage through a narrow strait. According to the Finnish media, these are the two main causes for another passenger ferry accident off the coast of Finland in recent months. Due to the storm, it was impossible to evacuate the passengers. I am on board Viking Grace and we ran aground. The situation is under control, but we have to spend the night on the ferry. The evacuation should start in the morning. After scuba divers inspected the hull of the vessel, the decision was made to haul the ferry to the harbor. There, passengers embarked on another vessel. This is not the first such incident with ferries operating in Northern Europe. Much more dangerous one took place last year at the coast of Norway. During the storm, as a result of an engine failure, the ferry lost its steering capacities and drifted towards the rocky coast. It was necessary to evacuate several hundred of passengers.
Now let's change the subject. A peculiar rescue operation took place in India. An elephant got stuck in a well, so people rushed in to help the poor animal. After 14 hours of struggle, the elephant was finally set free.
A local farmer heard the cries of the elephant in the well and alerted local authorities, who arrived at the 55-foot deep well with a team of 50 people. Despite the depth of the well, the water inside was shallow and was pumped out to make it easier to access the 25-year-old male elephant. 2 excavators, trucks and a crane were used in the operation, which brought the elephant out unharmed. Speaking of endangered animals, a zoo in the central Mexican city of Tlaxcala is celebrating the arrival of 5 African lion cubs. The cubs, 3 females and 2 males, were born in July but were only introduced recently due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. The little lions are from different mothers and have the same father, a male who is approximately 12 years old. This doesn't keep them from being a happy family. This is a true sigh of relief for Madrid's street vendors. The biggest street market in the capital, so-called El Rastro, reopened with tightened security and fewer stalls, more than 8 months after closing because of the coronavirus. Visitors' numbers were limited, stalls were spaced further apart, and police stood at the entrances and exits to ensure people stuck to one-way routes around the market. Records of the market date back to 1740, and these days you can pick up everything from jewelry and antiques to t-shirts and kitchenware. One Belgian restaurateur has figured out a clever workaround for pandemic restrictions. Every day, instead of serving his customers inside his restaurant, he rents them motorhomes parked in his parking lot. Once there, they can simply order delivery. Everything is disinfected regularly, and the municipality has already given their authorization. The rental costs 25 euros. Alternatively, you can come in your own motorhome.
Well, isn't that creative? Anything to make an extra euro in this time of crisis. Well, that's the end of our show. Take care, stay safe, and see you next time. Good night.